This Monday, District Judge Vanessa Baraitser ruled that Julian Assange cannot be extradited to the U.S. to face charges of espionage and of hacking government computers. U.S. President Donald Trump and President-elect Joe Biden are set to converge on Georgia ahead of Tuesday polling day in a final push for votes. Representatives of India's government and also protesting rural workers failed again Monday to reach an agreement. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. This Monday, District Judge Vanessa Baraitser ruled that Julian Assange is not to be extradited to the U.S. to face charges of espionage and hacking government computers. An appeal is expected to be mounted against the ruling, which comes after weeks of hearings at the Old Bailey last year and campaigning by Assange's supporters and others who have decried U.S. charges against him as an attack on press freedom. The case against the 49-year-old relates to WikiLeaks' publication of hundreds of thousands of leaked documents about the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, as well as diplomatic cables in 2010 and 2011. Assange's lawyers argue that the prosecution is politically motivated and that he's being pursued because of WikiLeaks' published U.S. government documents that reveal evidence of war crimes and human rights abuses. And today we have with us Fidel Narvaez, who helped Julian Assange to obtain political asylum from Ecuador and live for years with the founder of WikiLeaks during his imprisonment in the South American country's embassy. Mr. Narvaez, thank you for your time and also for being with teleSUR this morning.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Hello, Fidel. So we have to talk regarding this subject, which is I think the paramount news today. So first, how this decision of not extradite Assange to the U.S. could change his case?
Well, this is a very important and long-awaited decision because basically, for now, is stopping the extradition of Julian Assange to the United States. It should be considered a victory for him, victory for his legal team, and I very much hope that it won't be reversed in the second instance, because as we know, there's going to be an appeal from behalf of the U.S. prosecutors. It's a victory, however, it's very worrying that the only reason why Julian Assange was not extradited today is because his fragile health condition and the high risk that he has of committing suicide if he is extradited to the appalling and very oppressive prison regime in the United States. We should celebrate that the extradition was, for now, stopped today. Yes.
So we have another question for you, Fidel. Under your consideration, which were the events that led to the mental health argument to overrule the extradition petition?
Well, the fragile and very worrying emotional well-being of Julian Assange is a fact that is diagnosed by the highest specialist in the United Kingdom. They provided extensive evidence of his psychological situation when the extradition hearings took place several months ago. He was being assessed not only by private specialists in this country, but also by the United Nations specialists on behalf of the United Nations Rapporteur for Torture. And it's the result of so many years of persecution, defamation, and psychological torture. The persecution against Julian lasts already 10 years. 10 years he hasn't been free. He spent nearly 7 years inside the Ecuadorian embassy in very, very hard, difficult conditions, because the embassy is not meant for living. It's an office space. And in the last year of his stay, he was under basically harassment from the new government of Ecuador, who wanted to get rid of him, who wanted to break him down, who wanted to him to come out of his own accord. Julian was isolated, uncommunicated. He was not allowed to have visitors. So this condition is the result of all that, plus nearly 20 months already in a high security prison under very, very oppressive conditions. So you can see Julian as a strong person. He has a strong personality, but 10 years of being persecuted by the most powerful enemies on earth, it has obviously very damaging consequences for him.
Yes, we know this is an important decision that also decriminalize the journalistic activity, because that's one of the main spots, the main subjects surrounding or regarding this case of Assange. The fact that the U.S. is criminalization of this journalistic activity. But in this case, aside of what can come from the future, and also the future U.S. appeal, because that's a probability, what comes next for Assange after this decision?
Well, immediately, I think his defense team is requesting for a bail so he can continue the case, defending himself in freedom. And he deserves to be already free. He just won his case, and it will be outrageous if the British judicial system insists in keeping him in prison. He's not serving any sentence. He has not been sentenced guilty of anything. He should be defending himself in freedom. The appeal will go to a superior court. A team of judges will look at the appeal. That could take several months, but I remain very hopeful that today's decision won't be reversed. But as you say, this is a political case. This is much more than about a person, about a journalist, although it's very, very important, his fate, his situation. But today, the judge, in her statement, basically criminalized journalism. She upheld most of the perverse allegations coming from the US prosecutors. And every journalist around the world should be worried about that. If it wasn't for the fragile health condition of Julian Assange, he would be already extradited for committing no crime, basically for publishing. If somebody dares to publish something that the United States do not like, they will be in danger of being extradited to the United States and submitted to very, very harsh conditions.
Yes, I personally believe that this decision makes more human the case, because it's a political case that everyone sees, but this is marking a human side. So Fidel, we thank you for your presence here from the South, and also for your time to teleSUR English.
Thank you very much, my pleasure.
Okay, so we'll take a short break now, but more, we will have more when we return.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Sean todos muy bienvenidos a Vidas.
Welcome back to From the South. Julian Assange supporters cheer and hug in front of the Old Bailey in London after a British judge ruled that the WikiLeaks founder should not be extradited to the United States to face espionage charges for publishing secret documents online, finding he was at risk of suicide. Lawyers for U.S. authorities are to appeal against the ruling, which was delivered at the Central Criminal Court by the District Judge Vanessa Baraitser. The final decision on an appeal of this decision will fall to the British Home Secretary, while the stance of the U.S. President-elect Joe Biden will be crucial at any time. Delivering her ruling, the judge said the WikiLeaks founder was likely to be held in conditions of isolation in a so-called supermax prison in the U.S., and procedures described by the U.S. authorities will not prevent him from potentially finding a way to take his own life. The activist Elian Green, who has been fighting for the Julian Assange release, said they had awful morning as they were not allowed to assemble near the Old Bailey court, but they had to be there early morning.
And we had an awful time for hours outside the court. They wouldn't let us gather, they wouldn't let us assemble. There's the man who kept warning us, just standing to my left listening to me. Hello, my friend. Not exactly a friend, policeman. It was just a hideous experience the last few hours. We weren't allowed to assemble, to support,
What do you feel about the decision?
Sorry, I'm just trying to find my words. So to have spent hours of real distress and misery at the state of our country right now, where living isn't allowed anymore, to have gone from that state of misery in a blink to this extraordinary, I mean, yes, we're not all the way there, but my God, we're some of the way there, and it's a better result than anyone dared hope for. I mean, Craig Murray said the same thing. No one thought that this was coming. I mean, everyone is amazed, surprised. Every political point she made and picked apart was truly, truly awful. And yet, on health grounds, this really, thank God, wonderful decision. I mean, I don't know what to make of it all yet. I'm highly relieved, kind of suspicious. There was a bit of a leak on it some time ago, which I heard and could hardly believe, but it was true.
And also, Julian Assange's partner, Stella Morris, said today is a victory for Julian and a first step towards justice, adding that she is extremely concerned that the U.S. government had decided to appeal this decision.
A victory for Julian.
Yes. Yes.
Today's victory is the first step towards justice in this case. We are pleased that the court has recognized the seriousness and inhumanity of what he has endured and what he faces. But let's not forget, the indictment in the U.S. has not been dropped. We are extremely concerned that the U.S. government has decided to appeal this decision. It continues to want to punish Julian and make him disappear into the deepest, darkest hole of the U.S. prison system for the rest of his life.
U.S. President Donald Trump and President-elect Joe Biden are set to converge on Georgia ahead of Tuesday polling day in a final push for votes, a decision that determines whether Republicans or Democrats run the Senate. Biden's victory in Georgia in the presidential election has left Republicans feeling nervous about their chances in a traditionally red state, while Trump continues to rant without evidence about the rigged election process in the state. The runoff, which polls show on a knife edge, pits Republicans David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler against Democrats Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. Millions has poured into Georgia in a two-month election onslaught, but just before polling day, attention has been on Trump's extraordinary conversation with Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. The call, which was the first published by the Washington Post on Sunday, sees Mr. Trump attempt to pressure Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger into overturning the state election result, which saw Joe Biden claim a narrow victory. And Scottish leader Nicola Sturgeon said Monday that from Tuesday, people in Scotland are legally required to stay at home, except for essential reasons to curb a renewed surge of coronavirus infections. Sturgeon said that the new, faster-spreading variant of the virus is a massive blow, telling lawmakers that Scotland will be placed in lockdown for at least the whole of January to help ease the pressure of the hospitals and also intensive care units. Under the new lockdown rules, which are broadly similar to those imposed during the first peak of the pandemic in spring, people can go out for exercise but only meet one other person from another household. Scotland to date registers over 135,000 COVID-19 cases.
Spreading variant of the virus is a massive blow. And possibly the most simple way of explaining the challenge we face right now is to compare it to a race. In one lane we have vaccines, and our job is to make sure they can run as fast as possible. And that's why the government will be doing everything we can to vaccinate people as quickly as possible, and I will say more about that later. But in the other lane is the virus, which, as a result of this new variant, has just learned to run much faster and has most definitely picked up pace in the past couple of weeks. To ensure that the vaccine wins this race, it is essential to speed up vaccination as far as possible, but to give it the time it needs to get ahead, we must also slow the virus down. And because it is now spreading faster, that means even tougher restrictions are necessary.
And we'll have more stories after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Representatives of India's government and protesting rural workers failed again Monday to reach an agreement on the farmers' demand that agricultural reform laws be repealed. The government refused to revoke the new laws, and farmers pledged to continue blocking key highways linking the capitals and the country's north. Rural workers say the laws will lead to the cartelization and commercialization of agriculture and make farmers vulnerable to corporate greed. Tens of thousands of protesters have been blocking the highways for nearly 6 weeks, despite the coronavirus pandemic and bad weather. Despite the deep divisions, the government and the farmers agreed to meet for more talks on Friday.
There was a long debate about repealing the 3 new agricultural laws, but they are not ready to repeal them. In one way, you can say the meeting was inconclusive. The issues remain the same. Now we have been given another date for meeting, but looking at the government strategy, we don't have much hope for any agreement in the future. This government, when they are not in power, they talk for the people. When they are in power, they start talking for the corporates, referring to corporations. On the issue of the new laws, they keep repeating the same thing morning and night. I think it is not in their hands at all. They have to work according to their rulers, referring to corporations. They are merely puppets who dance in front of them.
On Monday, schools reopened in Kenya with over 15 million students expected to return to their classrooms, most of them for the first time since they closed in March due to the coronavirus pandemic. Students in some years returned to the school in October to prepare for exams, but on Monday, the bulk of the nation's students went back to school, following a Kenyan government directive that all schools should reopen on January 4th. Kenya is the last country in East Africa to reopen its schools, and head teachers have been advised to admit students from all years and to follow anti-COVID health protocols. This is proving to be challenging, with many schools overwhelmed by the number of students arriving. Students who returned in October were able to spread out among classrooms, but school heads said they did not have enough rooms to accommodate the January influx, with some classes having over 80 students, making social distancing virtually impossible. The reopening of schools comes as COVID-19 infections are on the rise across Africa.
We closed for COVID. We had a population of 2,409. As you can see inside there, of course there is an impact. We expect a big number of people to come in. Our classes, the smallest class has 82 people. The biggest class has 104. And we are aware of the challenge. And we have planned what to do. We may not achieve what we really wanted to do because we would have like a situation whereby we have at least 20 people per class or that. In our situation, we cannot even have 50. We shall definitely have the 80 because the classrooms are not available. Our compound is small because other than the school field, we don't have any other compound. But we have got to rise up to the challenge. We cannot tell those new children to go back home. They must be in a school somewhere.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.